Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another vacation planning discussion. Today we're talking about rope dropping Hollywood Studios, and buckle up because this is going to be a little bit different from some of our previous discussions about rope drop. Now for those of you who are just joining us for one of these conversations for the first time, hi, welcome. Just so that we're all on the same page, I want to take a second and explain what rope drop is. So rope drop is a strategy or technique that helps you get into the parks early with the goal of being here before the crowds. That usually means less wait time, shorter lines at security and such, and ultimately getting a head start on your day. Now we've talked a little bit about rope drop in the past and we'll surely talk more about it in the future, but I think it's a great way to go. I think it's a great strategy. It can generally save you a lot of time and a lot of money, but there are of course things that you need to know in order to make the most of rope drop, and that's what we've been talking about for all 4 of the theme parks, which today leads us to Hollywood Studios. Now Hollywood Studios is a unique park when it comes to rope drop, not just because of the park itself and the attractions that are inside, although you could argue that that plays a role. There are a number of attractions people like to rope drop here at this park, but because of the way that guests are divided up in order to get in the park for early theme park entry. So here at Walt Disney World, if you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort Hotel or another participating resort, you have access to something called early theme park entry, and it allows you to get into the parks 30 minutes before day guests. At other parks here at Walt Disney World, you're divided once you get through the turnstiles, meaning everyone can get into the park. They can boop their ticket and get in, and then from there they're divided up. Resort guests go one direction and everyone else, meaning day guests, go another. That's not the case here at Hollywood Studios. And this is just because of the nature of the park, although you could argue that they do have ways that they can go about doing this a little bit differently. Of course, that's neither here nor there because it's not how things are done now. That said, let's talk about what you can expect from Hollywood Studios if you plan on rope dropping. So like I said, here at Hollywood Studios, things are a little bit different than they are at other parks. You're gonna start off pretty much the same with everyone going through security, but once you get through security before you hit the turnstiles, that's where things are gonna be a little bit different. It's here that guests are going to be divided up. So guests staying at Walt Disney World Resort Hotels or other participating resorts are gonna make their way to a certain set of turnstiles where their credentials will be checked and they'll be let in, and everyone else is going to line up in front of a second set of turnstiles. Now this can be a little bit scary, and I'm gonna warn you ahead of time because we're gonna go look over there and you're gonna go, oh my goodness, what is going on? But that's one of the reasons that this can be a tricky park to rope drop, but more on that here in a bit. While resort guests will be allowed into the park, those day guests will have to stand in that line at the turnstiles until the park opens to day guests, and then they'll be allowed in. So yeah, it's a little bit trickier at this park and a little bit more time consuming, but as long as you're aware of it, it won't seem as bad. You'll know what to expect, right? But anyway, let's make our way through security, take a look at the line, just see what the situation is, and that'll give you a bit of a better idea of what to expect. Now once we get through security, you'll see that we're in a rather tight courtyard type area, and there's a lot of long lines over here, and then it doesn't look like there's much of a line over here, lots of people coming and going, but if you look really close you will see that that's because there's a sign over there directing us to the turnstiles for early theme park entry. So if you're a resort guest staying at one of those Walt Disney World Resort hotels or another participating resort, that's the direction you're gonna wanna go. The rest of us are going to get into this line, and you can see it's quite the long line. It's really intimidating, but this is where you're going to stand if you are trying to get into the park and you aren't staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel or at another participating resort. These are all the day guests. Now again, guests staying at Walt Disney World Resort hotels or other participating resorts will need to show their credentials in order to get into the park for early park entry, and all other guests will need to wait in that line until the park opens to day guests. Now, if you're looking at this line and you're thinking, hold on a second, that's a really long line. How long is it gonna take me to get through that line? That's a really great question. So I found that it can take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to get through that line. If we were to wait in line today, it's probably how long it would take us. It does tend to take a little bit longer during those busier times of year, especially when there's a lot of first-time guests who are visiting, because it can take a little bit of extra time, especially when guests don't necessarily get their ticket media all squared away before arriving at the park. Which is a little tip You want to make sure that you handle that before you get here, go to will call, guest relations, whatever the case may be, and get yourself squared away before you actually show up at the turnstiles. It'll make everything easier for you and much less stress for you and everyone else around you. But let's talk a little bit, just very briefly, about things you need to know beyond what we just talked about when rope dropping Hollywood Studios. So like I mentioned, it is a slower process and it does take more time to get into the park. So if you want to make your way to a park super early in order to take advantage of rope drop, this is going to be the park for that, particularly if you're not staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel or other participating hotel. The earlier you get here, the closer to the front of the line you'll be, and that means that you're going to have less time to wait in order to get into the park, which is something you really don't have to think about for any of the other parks here at Walt Disney World. Now, when I say get here early, I mean early. What we just looked at, that was 30 minutes prior to the park opening to day guests, so not quite what I would define as arriving early. I think you should be here at least an hour prior to the park opening to day guests, in best case scenario, an hour before early theme park entry. Is that super early? Yes. Is it going to be convenient for every family or doable for every family? No. But if you want to make the most of rope drop, I really think that that's the way to go, particularly for this park. But let me tell you a little secret when it comes to my thoughts on rope dropping Hollywood Studios. I don't like doing it. While I'm a huge fan of rope drop in general, and I do think that you easily can get more out of your day, even here at Hollywood Studios, if you show up early, I tend to steer away from rope dropping Hollywood Studios because I don't like to start my day by standing in that line. So what I do is I actually sit out here. We're right by the flagpoles, and I'll wait until the park opens to day guests. Usually about 30 minutes after that, the line does slow down a little bit, and you can actually start making your way in with a little bit more ease. Of course, depending on the time of the year. More specifically, I'm talking about those busy times of year, like holidays, spring break, and such. Still, I've had pretty good success going that route, and I think it's the way to go if you don't want to stand in that line, or getting up super early is like not in the cards for you. Now, all of this having been said, I do still think that it can be worth your time to arrive at Hollywood Studios early. Even if you're not arriving super duper early in order to get here like an hour before the park opens to early theme park entry guests, particularly if you're driving yourself. And the reason for that is because the sooner you get here, the better parking you can get. I know I've talked about this before when we talk about rope drop, but I like to be able to park in what is essentially preferred parking without having to pay for it. So I get here early, park super close to the front, and then rather than going in there or even sitting here, I can take a boat over to the boardwalk. They've got some great coffee over there at Carousel Coffee. You can go for a nice little walk, wander around, relax, enjoy your morning. Lots of great breakfast options over in those Epcot area resorts as well. We also have the Skyliner over here, and you can take that over to Riviera, one of our favorite breakfast spots here on property. Caribbean Beach has some options as well. So you can still make your way over here, get great parking, not rope drop, and enjoy a wonderful morning, and then have fantastic parking at the end of the day. You don't have to walk too far. You're just, boom, right there. You didn't have to pay for preferred parking either. Now, when it comes to other tips and tricks for making the most out of rope drop here at Hollywood Studios, without getting into too much strategy, I think that just like any other park, the most important thing is to have a priority list and have a backup plan. I also like to keep an eye on the My Disney Experience app here at this park and make sure that the attractions that I want to rope drop are actually open first thing in the morning, especially with Rise of the Resistance. Sometimes, that could be hit or miss. So rather than having to walk past it to see if it's actually open for the day, you can keep an eye on the app, and that'll give you a bit of a better way to go so that if you need to change your route, you can easily do that. Now, my next little tip for rope drop here at this park might surprise you because it's not the type of advice that I normally give, and it's not really something that's exclusive to rope drop, but that is to consider getting your individual lightning lane selections here at this park. Now, I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of individual lightning lane selections today, but this is essentially your ability to purchase a lightning lane, purchase your ability to cut the line and schedule when you're going to do it. It does come at an additional cost, which isn't something that I usually recommend. I like to keep things as cheap as possible because Disney's expensive, travel is expensive, so I don't want to recommend that you just spend money willy-nilly, but if you're going to do it, this might be the park to do it at. especially because rope drop can be a little bit tough here. So if you're gonna spring for those individual Lightning Lane selections, maybe consider them here at Hollywood Studios if the available individual Lightning Lane selections that are offered during your visit are the attractions that you want to go on. Of course, individual Lightning Lane selections aren't exclusive to rope drop. You can get them for whatever time throughout the day, but my point being, if rope drop is a strategy that you're utilizing to save money, it works at pretty much every other park. It's not as great here at Hollywood Studios. You need to do a little bit more, work a little bit harder, get here a little bit earlier, so just keep that in mind. But I think that about does it for our discussion about rope drop here at Hollywood Studios. Let me know your thoughts. If you've ever rope dropped this park, what are some of your tips and tricks for other guests? I want to hear all of them in the comments down below. Also, take a second, hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this, and subscribe if you haven't already. We have so much more to talk about when it comes to planning a Disney vacation or a vacation in general, and I hope that you join us for that. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, guys.